Hey everybody, sorry we're getting started a little bit late, and a little bit late I suppose, but it's time for the weekly news recap of the 15th to the 21st of April 2024. And I hope that's what it actually says on Twitch, because I'm not looking at it right now. Anyway, moving on. So this week, Nintendo had a Nintendo's Indie World Showcase, where they show off a bunch of independent games that are coming to the Switch, and the eShop and various other things. Later on in the year. So there was speculation that we'd see Silksong again. There's always speculation that we'll see Silksong. At this point, we're not going to see Silksong on an indie showcase. It's going to be on a much bigger showcase at this point. But anyway, people still hold out hope. There was no Silksong news. So this is Kotaku's Levi Winslow, who has a bit of a roundup for all the games that we did see. So we'll go through a few of them. So Little Kitty Big City. We played a little bit of this during a Steam Next Fest. I don't remember which one. So the basic gist of this game is you play a cat, a little kitty, as you might imagine. It's normally a domestic cat. They have never been outside before. Some shenanigans transpire and they end up out in the city, kind of discovering the place for them themselves. You have a bunch of to-dos. You can kind of think of it as... Think of it as the Untitled Goose Game, but you're a cat. Like, it's that kind of thing. You just go around doing cat things for most of the game. There is like a general story. You are trying to get home, effectively. But for the most part, you're just being an annoying cat. Pretty much. I really liked it, actually. The small demo that we played during the Next Fest, it was quite interesting. There's a lot of little interactions you can have that you wouldn't necessarily think of. There are some climbing mechanics and stuff. The animals you interact with are actually pretty funny. The crow in particular, I think, is hilarious. There's also a tanuki at some point that's kind of requires your help. It doesn't want to ask for your help, and it's kind of funny. Anyway, it doesn't take itself very seriously in any way whatsoever. But it is out the end of May, I think, is the release date for it. Oh, sorry, the beginning of May. So May 9th, Little Kitty Big City. It'll also be on PC. I don't remember if it's getting a console release or not. I think it's like a timed thing where it's going to be on the Switch for a little bit and then it'll make its way to PlayStation and Xbox, but I'm not sure. Anyway, Yars Rising, this was an announcement. This is a kind of side-scrolling... combat platform thing from Way Forward. What kind of seems interesting is that Yars seems to be only able to fight kind of like holographic type enemies, or like, I think the gist of it is that she's a hacker, and so when she hacks into things, she effectively turns it into like a Metroid type thing, and she's running around and jumping around platforms and stuff like that. But there are parts of the game where it looks like you are running from enemies that maybe you can't fight, or maybe there just is a kind of stealth or runaway option or something. It'll be out later this year, but no firm release date. Refine Self, the personality test game, is kind of a choose your own adventure type thing. So you're an automaton or an android. Your creator has gone missing. You do have space for a personality matrix, but it is not refined yet, as the name might suggest. So the idea is you just interact with the world and tackle problems, people, issues, situations as you would normally feel like it. And by the end of the game, or at various stages through the game, you'll be assigned a personality type kind of thing. It's nothing like super in depth or anything. It's like, oh, you like to help people out, so you're like a wandering errant knight kind of thing, or you take charge, you're like a leader type, or you dispense wisdom, you're a sage type, and that kind of stuff. It's almost like collecting RPG classes in a way. Sticky Business is was stealth launched, I think. Yeah, it was stealth launched today. So Sticky Business, how to explain it? It's a kind of a business sim thing, and your business is creating stickers for people. Also, there's a dog. So this is the reason why I'm playing the trailer, is because of the dog. Anyway, the idea with Sticky Business is you are like an independent artist. People ask for custom stickers from you, and you basically create sticker sheets by combining various assets together to make kind of interesting stickers and stuff. It seems like it's a pretty chill type game. I'm not sure exactly how much gameplay is in it, so much as it's kind of more of a creative tool more than anything else. For you to just make things. Like, you will be asked to make like various things for people, but I think it's largely up to you to decide whether or not you completed the task. I think it's it. Again, I'm not entirely sure where the gameplay comes in. Like, maybe they ask for particular things, and there's probably tags on the various assets to say this is food, this is animals, this is whatever. And if you have enough of them in the correct places, it counts as complete. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just showing it off because it was released on the day, so it's technically a new release game. So put it out there. As far as I'm aware, it is Switch exclusive for consoles, at least. I'm pretty sure it's on PC as well. Anton Blast. So these next two games, I think I fell asleep because I don't remember them at all. At some point, I fell asleep during the Indie World Showcase, or I got sidetracked by something else and just wasn't paying attention because I don't remember either of these two games. That's not to say they're good or bad or anything. I just literally do not remember anything about them showing up. So I'm just gonna... Sorry, Valley Peaks, and sorry, Anton Blast, but I don't remember. I don't remember you at all. Okay. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. So this is the next game from the people behind Sayonara Wild Hearts. Sayonara Wild Hearts is a pretty well-received rhythm action game. As you can see, they're Year Walk, Device 6, and Sayonara Wild Hearts. So there's some interesting genres there. They haven't really locked themselves into anything in particular. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes looks like it's going for a adventure game, modern point and click, maybe survival horror. It's not clear if there's a survival element to it or if it's just weird and creepy. We don't know a huge amount about like the story or the premise or anything like that, but I think the idea is that there is some possession element thing. It's just what the Laser Eyes business is about. And as you can see, there's a kind of maze element to the game too. But whether there's an actual like survival horror type thing, like whatever, a zombie equivalent or what have you. Anyway, as you can see, what was it, May 16th? So May 16th. It's out pretty soon. I'm actually quite looking forward to that. So we will at least do a fully plays a bit of it. But I'm thinking we'll probably do a full Let's Play. I was actually expecting this game to be out much later in the year. I was thinking this would be a September thing. But no, it's going to be out pretty soon. Europa is a kind of 3D platformer type thing, solving puzzles type deal. It's a bit Breath of the Wild, but maybe without any of the combat elements to it. Much more of an exploratory kind of thing. There is a demo available right now if you want to give it a shot. I've been meaning to do that. I haven't got around to it yet. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Splintered Fate. That makes more sense because Splinter is a card. Anyway, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate is Hades, but you're the turtle. That's kind of it. So it's a roguelike thing. You can play as any of the 4 turtles. There is a cooperative element to it, so you can have 4 people jump in and take control of each turtle. It's not clear if you can play as 2 Michelangelos or 3 Raphaels or whatever. The art looks gorgeous. Obviously, it's going to be a question of how well the game plays. The different characters do have different perks, pros and cons around them. Donatello obviously has the longest reach out of all of the characters. Raphael has the shortest reach, but probably has... I believe they do say he has like an extremely high crit rate compared to the rest of them. And then I guess it will say, I don't know, Michelangelo maybe can hit more enemies at once, or Leonardo can moves quicker, or something like that. Who knows? It is a roguelite, so you will be bringing aspects of your run, back to the hub world to improve your characters and so on. There are, I believe the characters are all kind of distinct, so they'll all have their own leveling up tree. So it is effectively 4 characters to go through the roguelike with instead of Hades's, which was, you just played Zagreus. Not that that was a bad thing. There was plenty to do in that game. But yeah, it looks like people are seeing Hades and going, yeah, let's just do that. It nailed the roguelike perfectly, so let's just do it. Anyway, out July at some point, which is kind of interesting because you pretty much never see games coming out in June or July. Unless they're huge. Unless they know that they can weather coming out on a bad day. I don't know why summer is considered a bad time. But you hardly ever see games being released in the summer. Cat Quest 3, I think we did mention this at one point during the III initiative showcase. I to be honest, I don't understand the premise of the game, so I'm just going to move past it. Stitch. So yeah, Stitch actually looks pretty cool. I'm probably showing my age now, probably, but it just looks fun and cozy element to it. So it's a stitching game. It is a puzzle kind of thing. So the idea is you have these numbers, and the numbers are basically meant to show like contiguous yarn or contiguous stitching blocks, if you like. So you need to get 5 of this color all in one go without crossing over other blocks and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a process of elimination kind of thing. It's got a bit of Sudoku to it. I think that's what I kind of get the vibe from it. I'm kind of interested to see how this plays specifically. And you can find out yourself because it actually stealth launched during the Indie World Showcase. So it's actually out right now. We'll probably give that a look myself. Probably off stream though, because I do look for chill games to play off stream. And then the game they finished with was SteamWorld Heist 2, but I don't know anything about the SteamWorld stuff, so I'm going to move past it. Despite the title of this article saying everything we saw at Nintendo's Indie World Showcase, this actually wasn't everything we saw at Nintendo's Indie World Showcase. I'm actually kind of annoyed that Kotaku and Eurogamer and a lot of articles that have, hey, here's everything that was at the Indie World Showcase. It's like, no, it's not. There was more stuff. I don't know why you do this to me. Last week's III initiative thing. Normally I catch them on this because, I watched the whole thing. But as you noticed, I did sort of lose concentration during the Indie World Showcase last week. There's 2 games there that I completely forgot about. And that did happen during the III initiative. So there were more games than I mentioned last week. Some of them were actually quite good looking. Anyway, this is Skim. This has been shown off a couple of times. This was part of a kind of sizzle reel during the Nintendo Indie World Showcase. This trailer didn't play in its entirety. It was only a couple of seconds. But it's getting a release date. The idea of Skim, I don't know how to pronounce it, is to... basically, you're playing this kind of shadow creature that can only jump between shadows. So it's got a bit of a puzzle element to it where you're trying to get from point A to point B, and it's like, how do I get there when I can only use the shadows? But as you can see, sometimes things change. Jump into the bird takes off for some reason. You can see it's got its release date. It's also in July, so games coming out in July. It's strange, but it's happening anyway. Also, Duck Detective: The Secret Salami also got its release date during the Nintendo Indie World Showcase. It's coming out at the end of May, May 23rd. We played a bit of this during the last Steam X Fest. It's a really cute kind of detective type game, as you might imagine. The Duck Detective. It's got a bit of Obra Dinn to it, and it's got a bit of The Case of the Golden Idol. So there's a lot of process of elimination, a lot of ad-libbing kind of things in. It's like you're given sentences and you're sort of having to fill in the blanks kind of thing. Which Obra Dinn did have a little bit of that. You're given the premise of like, who is this person, how did they die, and so on. Case of the Golden Idol was who was doing this at what time with what in the, it's a bit like Clue, I suppose, the board game. But yeah, this one obviously doesn't take itself particularly seriously. Obra Dinn and The Case of the Golden Idol were a bit more serious type games. The Duck Detective Secret Salami is a very silly premise, but the gameplay looked really fun in the Next Fest. Anyway, moving on. Those were not the only updates this week. Outside of the Nintendo Indie World Showcase, there were a couple of game announcements and a couple of release date announcements and stuff like that. So first up, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 had an announcement trailer. It also had a fairly lengthy stream with interviews and stuff from the team and what have you. So a lot of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just looks like more of Kingdom Come Deliverance, to be honest. What I'd be really curious to know is just, have they fixed the clunk? Because Kingdom Come Deliverance was very ambitious. And because of that, it was very clunky as well. Very glitchy, very buggy. Fun time, but it's difficult to recommend it because it's like, I want you to think about how buggy Skyrim is, and then this was even buggier than that. Anyway, but it did have a lot going for it. It was a very interesting type of game. I would also be interested to know if you can actually save in this version of the game. You weren't able to save in the first game. Basically, the way it worked is it had an autosave, so you couldn't do the kind of, Elder Scrolls, I'm just going to quick save here and murder everybody and then, quick load back to where I was. They didn't really have that. They did have a saving system where you had to drink a special potion, and that did allow you to make a permanent save. But as a consequence of it, it made you massively drunk for the next hour or so of gameplay. It was very punishing. Just let people save scum. Just let them do it. Just let them do it. They're only hurting themselves or not hurting themselves. Just let them do it. That's always been my opinion on games having, very strange save mechanics. Just let people save scum. They're gonna do it. They're gonna find a way to do it anyway, and they did because they just modded it out. But obviously, the console versions didn't get that. Anyway, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I haven't looked into the storyline because I haven't played the first game yet, so I don't know exactly where they're going with it for this one. If you're interested, you'll have to check out the trailer yourself. There's no release date or anything given there. It's just we're working on it. Big shock. It did very well for Warhorse Studios. Yeah, apparently this year, but. Yeah, that's gonna slip. That's gonna slip into next year. Anyway, another game that was shown off, or announced rather, is Astro Pulse Reincarnation. This is from Imaginary Studios. These are former Blizzard people, and it's headed up by one of Blizzard's former senior artists. And it is very obvious that they came from Blizzard, because this could so easily be StarCraft. This could so easily be modern Diablo kind of thing, because there's so much of it is there. There's no gameplay in this trailer. It's entirely CG, and it looks like we're being introduced to the villains of the piece. There's some sort of future plague situation going on. How your characters fit into it, we're not entirely sure. There's a good bit of Scorn in there as well. Some body horror elements. I'm skipping ahead of a lot of things here. The trailer is actually quite good, but again, it shows, nothing about gameplay. We don't even know what kind of game it'll be. It strikes me as a Diablo-like. I think that is that feels like what they're going for, but again, without having seen it, without having seen any gameplay or anything like that, who knows? That does seem like that's the kind of game they're going for, and there's bums as well. There's a lot of throwbacks to other Blizzard designs, like Lilith right there. That's you could lift that almost entirely out of the Diablo 4 trailer. It looks exactly like her. Kerrigan from StarCraft, she looks like her, the Queen of Blades and so on. I'm kind of curious about this very obvious weak point they have, though. Obviously, I'm just going to shoot them right in the heart. I don't see why. Have you guys thought this through? I don't think you have. Anyway, no release date or anything. It's just, we're working on it. Okay, some actual release dates. So 1000X Resist. This is a kind of narrative thriller thing / kind of, I think it's like a bit of a dungeon crawler vibe going for it. What I was really interested about is just kind of its art direction and the kind of style it's going for. And I like me some anime visual novel type deals. This does look like it has some kind of, do androids dream of electric sheep going on with it as well, and androids trying to be human, and what does that mean, and what does it mean to be human, etc., etc. Anyway, May 9th, 2024. I believe it's PC and I think it's Switch. I think it's everything. I don't know. It's not everything. It's PC for definite, and Nintendo Switch, and not. Well, I'm not seeing any of the other consoles, so I guess that's what it is. It's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. This wasn't shown off during the Indie World Showcase for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway. Capes. We did see a little bit of this again at the AAA initiative thing. Now it has its release date. So Capes is effectively Marvel's Midnight Suns, but without the license. So it's superheroes. Superheroes have been forced underground for whatever reason. It's probably got a little bit of the Marvel Civil War stuff going on. So they're being captured and taken away, and who knows what's happening to them. I think they're being turned into some kind of extra legal, extra military force. But the gist of it is it's a turn-based tactics kind of thing, where your characters are superheroes of some kind. They have pretty obvious superpowers, teleporters, super strong people, super speedy people, that kind of stuff, you know. Enemies that you encounter also appear to have some element of superpowers to them, which would suggest that, you know, the government, when they arrest superheroes, they are indoctrinating them to become some kind of military force or whatever. We don't know. I don't know the story, but that's kind of what we're going with. That is out mid-May, I think, is what they were going for as the release date. Could be full of shit now, but I think that's what it was. They were just about to show the release date, weren't they, when I skipped it? Got that. May 29th. Okay, no, it's the end of May. Right. And then last one to show off, Mullet Mad Jack. We played this again during the most recent Steam Next Fest. It was kind of a standout for me. It was probably one of the better, possibly the best game I played during all of that. Children of the Sun was also very good. But Mullet Mad Jack, I was there just playing it for ages. I kind of lost track of time, actually, while we were streaming it. It is a very high speed, high octane, first-person shooter type thing. The idea for Mullet Mad Jack is you have like 10 seconds to live or 11 seconds to live or something like that. May 15th. And your life, or the time you have left, is tied in with how many viewers you have at any one time, or how many likes you're getting, or something like that. And you're getting likes and viewership and so on by just killing enemies really fancy ways, or killing them fast and stuff like that. But basically, it's a time attack sort of thing. But it didn't really feel like that. Like the time limit to it does actually feel pretty generous. I don't think at any point I was in a position where, I'm actually going to run out of time here. If anything, I think I died the traditional way by just getting shot. But I don't think I ever ran out of time that whole demo. No, okay, maybe they may have rebalanced it in the intervening time. And I think we were only really playing the very beginning of the game. Like, we did none of the sniping stuff. We did none of the driving sections or anything like that. None of that is in the demo. Or potentially it is, but we didn't get that far, maybe. That could have been it. Anyway, May, what was it, 19? 15. May 15th for that one. Okay. Okay, so one other thing to point out during this week, itch.io, which is another PC storefront, but it's also like it's kind of a storefront for a lot of indie games that you wouldn't typically find them on Steam or GOG or that kind of thing. They're much smaller developed things, very small teams. A lot of them are free, and then a lot of them are very short, kind of experimental kind of things. People sort of figuring out what they want to make a bigger game out of, and they might make something smaller and that kind of thing. But anyway, itch.io is currently running a Palestinian relief bundle. So this is in aid of PCRF, Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So all the money that's generated from this bundle will go towards them. There are some pretty good games in this list. A Short Hike is kind of worth the asking price all by itself. But there's close to like almost 400 games here. Or 400 items, I should say. They're not all games. Some of them are like tutorials and stuff like that. And some of them are, what do you call it? Physical games, board game kind of stuff. But there's a lot. Like, I could scroll here for quite a while. there's a lot. There's a lot going on there. Anyway, up to you if you want to contribute or anything like that. I did. Disclosure. There is a similar bundle also going on for tabletop RPGs, which I also contributed to, but that's up to you. Anyway, moving on. Free games. So the free game this week over on the Epic Games Store, The Big Con, which is this kind of narrative thing set in the 90s. You're playing a 90s radical teenager. And the idea is your parents' video rental store is being foreclosed on, and you are doing questionably legal things to sort of prevent that from happening. Very tongue-in-cheek, and I do like the kind of allusions to the old, you wouldn't download a car fucking thing. It's like, if I could download a car, I fucking would. Anyway, moving on. The other one isn't really a free game exactly. I mean, I don't know why it's in this section because it was always free. But step into Town of Salem. Anyway, it's Town of Salem 2. It's a mobile free to play thing. Like, I mean, yes, it's in the free game section because it's a free to play game. It's always like that. But it's it's going to be full of microtransactions and mini buys and energy elements and all of that shit that everybody hates. Yeah, I really don't know why that's in the Epic free game thing, but it is. Anyway, moving on. All right, monthly games. So we have Game Pass, the refresh for second half of April. So coming to Game Pass will be another Crab's Treasure and Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes are both. Another Crab's Treasure and Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes are both launching day one on Game Pass, so these are brand new releases. Another Crab's Treasure is from Aggro Crab. They are the people behind Going Under, as well as a bunch of other games. Another Crab's Treasure is effectively Dark Souls, but you're a crab. And you have lost your shell, so you're a hermit crab. You've lost your shell, you want to get it back, and now you have to do Dark Souls shenanigans to do that. But much like Going Under, it's very much a comedy style game. There's a lot of really stupid shit going on. There's some really funny accessibility options as well. Obviously, the Dark Souls games are known for being difficult, and Another Crab's Treasure, if you play it, straight vanilla, yeah, it's pretty hard. But if you put on some of the funny accessibility modes and stuff like that, it ends up being quite a fun game. There's one that they just give you a gun, like a real gun. It's a giant gun, and this crab is small, so it's like a real to life massive fucking gun. And you can just shoot them and they die in one hit. It's hilarious. Absolutely would suggest you try it at least once because this is very, very funny. Anyway, again, that was during Index Fest. It's possibly they've done some changes, but I doubt they've changed too much. Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is a spiritual successor to the Suikoden JRPG series. We haven't seen any of in quite some time. The Suikoden JRPGs are they're JRPGs that have a huge cast of characters typically. So you have parties of hundreds of characters, and you're having to whittle it down into the couple that come with you during the adventures. 100 Heroes, as the name would suggest, has 100 heroes, so it's not quite going to Suikoden 3 levels of having 1,000 characters to do, which is just ridiculous because so many of them were just copies and palette swaps and what have you. Anyway, I did play the prequel game, Ayuden Chronicle Rising, I think is what it was called. So this is a Kickstarter project. I didn't back it on Kickstarter. It's one of the few that I haven't backed on Kickstarter, really. I did like Rising, but Rising's going to be a very different game. Rising was more of a side-scrolling action platformer type thing, whereas 100 Heroes is going to be a fairly traditional tactical turn-based JRPG kind of thing. But yeah, more Suikoden, because fucking Square aren't going to be making it, so somebody has to. Right, then we have a Nice Death. We did play this on the channel a while ago as part of my Fully Plays Games a Bit series. Have a Nice Death is a roguelike, not unlike Hades sort of thing. Hades, Dead Cells, that sort of thing. You play Death, head CEO of Death Inc. You have been fairly much snowed under by paperwork and just clerical work that you've had to do because your subordinates are not taking their job seriously, properly. They're just killing people indiscriminately. Wanton death and destruction. It's causing a lot of work for you, and you're sick of it. So now you're dropping down to talk to your managers and, well, talk. I say talk. You're going to hit them with your scythe a lot. That's kind of the deal. You're sort of putting everything back to the way it's supposed to be. You're not just killing people randomly for no reason. You know, you're just for profits, I suppose. People should be dying for a specific reason. Orcs Must Die 3 is a kind of tower defense type thing. Like a dungeon keeper kind of thing, where you create traps for hordes of orcs that are attacking you, and you try to bottleneck them, get them all to land on various traps, and then your character can also run around the map dealing with any ones that manage to get their way through the traps. NHL 24, ice hockey game, same as NHL 23, 22, 21, and so on. Banner Lords, as far as I'm aware, is Crusader Kings, but just by a different developer. Anyway, those will be hitting Xbox Game Pass probably next week at some point. So those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, we have Harold Halibut that I have been looking at for a while. Mostly I've been really interested in its art style and its art direction because it has this kind of stop motion, almost puppetry, almost claymation element to it that I've pretty much never seen in any other game. So I'm really interested to see how it actually feels when you're walking around with it and you're playing it. From what I've seen from reviews, a lot of people are impressed with the art direction, with just how the game looks and so on, but are less impressed with the game's story. They kind of feel that it's a bit boring. So I guess we'll see. As you can see, it's on everything except the Switch. We'll check this out at some point, though I do believe friend of the channel, Melvin, is planning to do a full Let's Play of it themselves, so I might just leave it to them and just redirect you over to their stream instead. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst parts of video games, the video game industry. So this is from Sports Illustrated Video Games. F1 manager developer accused of dehumanizing layoffs and mismanagement. So this is from Frontier. Frontier are responsible for the F1 management style games, but they're also responsible for things like the Jurassic World game, which is where you manage Jurassic Park effectively. And the tactics games from Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, and then those kind of 4-player, almost Left 4 Dead type Warhammer games, like Demon Tide, Chaos Tide, Vermin Tide, all of those. That's all Frontier. Anyway. Back in October of last year, Frontier Development posted a trade update bearing awful news for its employees that they were going to be doing the layoff thing that everybody else is doing, which would have included its substantial layoffs that were targeting a 20% reduction in annual operating costs, which is kind of substantial, honestly. Anyway, as is common in the games industry, publishing and community management took the primary hits. They're all supposed to be, we'll take the numbers from everybody, all departments, but almost primarily it is community and publishing that take the biggest hit because they don't see the importance of those jobs. So community, publishing, and testing. To be fair, testing is usually the ones that get fucked over the most. But I'm guessing Frontier don't have a testing department. They must outsource that to somebody else. Anyway. After firing a number of these employees, it is now looking to refill those exact same positions in the same area. So yeah, that's great. That is, unfortunately, also kind of part and parcel to these kind of things, is that you fire the people because they're asking for too much money, or you would be required to pay them too much money, and you'll instead re-advertise the exact same position for less money. And might even hire that person back on less money, because maybe they're in a precarious position where they really, really need that job. Anyway, though Frontier alerted employees being at risk of redundancy of that fact in October, the actual re-evaluation process for those workers took several weeks to transpire. So you tell you in October, a bunch of you are up for being laid off, we'll get back to you later, and the later was like December. Can you imagine having to be worried about your job for that length of time? They just let it happen anyway. Basically, that means that the layoffs only really happened, the last couple of weeks or so. So Francesca Falsini, former senior community manager at Frontier, did talk to Sports Illustrated for this article, and they described it as 3 months of hell and called it a very cruel process. She had to wait until December of last year to get the very first consultation. And as part of that consultation, they had to prove that they actually did their job with the company. Why do you need me to do this? Look at your own... Are you not tracking what I do? Is it taking you up until this time for management to discover whether or not I'm doing my job or not? So obviously that is garbage all by itself, but this other issue was brought up, which is the Bradford factor. So the Bradford factor is this really horrible, dehumanizing thing. But basically, it is a metric that measures employee absence without taking its context into account. So it's just a measurement of how many days off you took. You know, how many times were you absent from work, versus how much money you make for the company, versus how much it costs to keep you employed, versus a bunch of other things. But it's never ever taken into account that you had very legitimate reasons for being absent. So it's being absent specifically. It's not like your annual leave or anything like that. It's absence without cause, I think is what they call it. But it doesn't take into account that I literally have cancer. I have to go to these treatments, or bereavement leave, or any of that kind of stuff. Like it doesn't take any of that into account. It is a fucking terrible metric to use for people, but corporate gonna corporate anyway. Having to stay at a hospital or 7 days for pneumonia or having PTSD or any of that kind of stuff is never taken into account, which basically means all they're seeing are lots of days off or lots of days absent without cause, which is obviously going to reduce the Bradford factor. And employees that have been shown to have a low Bradford factor are basically ripe for being laid off. That's kind of the way it's used anyway. So she had to provide evidence that her days of absence were justified and not excessive, and this included having to hand in letters from her therapist that were detailing various conditions and ongoing treatments and that kind of thing. It was humiliating, dehumanizing, and cruel, and also possibly illegal. It's reasonably certain your employer is not meant to know any of that information. Anyway, the redundancy packages were demeaning, the process was cruel, we weren't told people had left until they had already gone half the time, and a lot of talent was left at the door. So for Francesca herself, she did pass the reevaluation after they took a bunch of these things into consideration that they're not actually meant to take into consideration for the Bradford factor, but, human beings are part of the process. They are going to take these things in anyway. She was allowed to keep her position, but she resigned anyway. Because, of course, this is the shit that they're putting you through. It's like, fuck you, I don't need this job. Anyway, Falsini elaborated on these redundancy packages. We were offered the bare minimum allowed by UK law, meaning those who were working for the company for less than 2 years, which is pretty much everybody, because like a lot of companies over the COVID break, they pushed for growth because they were getting 0% credit loans and stuff like that. So a lot of people there would have been working less than 2 years. They only got the statutory redundancy pay, and we were all told our benefits, including healthcare, rent-to-buy schemes to pay off for tech, etc., from our paychecks would be terminated, leaving a lot of people in a serious area of financial concern. So, while some people might have been able to weather the layoff, some people might be heavily in debt now because of that layoff. A layoff that did not have to happen, as we are about to discover why. So, Fazzini, she had worked on the company's most lucrative titles, Jurassic World, Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster, and all of these things, and even she was still at threat of being made redundant, which would probably give you an idea of how poorly this company was being run and is currently still being run. The atmosphere at Frontier after the layoffs was horrendous. She described that the process kept being drawn out and felt very corporate, with little concern for those leaving or staying. Yep, corporate gonna corporate. All right, that makes sense. All right. Frontier specifically targeted workers who were vocal about leadership in internal calls. This is kind of alleged from some other employees who wanted to remain anonymous. Alcini said they couldn't confirm that, but later on we're going to discover that the people who survived the process sure were very pro-Frontier. So anyway, they were told that they were being inconsiderate by sharing their concerns or discussing the redundancies on work channels. Like, where else are you gonna discuss it? This is the usual shit of where your job tells you not to discuss your pay with your coworkers. It's like, 1, fuck off, and 2, you are absolutely allowed to do that. In fact, it is the only way you will learn that you are being underpaid. Anyway, at one point, the entire staff was told that their use of emojis, clown emojis, or sad faces in reaction to the senior leadership refusing to provide answers were hostile. You know what else was hostile? Laying off people without cause. That's also pretty hostile too. Not answering questions about these things. Pretty hostile. Drawing this process out for 3 months. Pretty hostile. A little yellow face underneath your message is not hostile. Okay. Anyway. I would also say that most of the people that were kept on, or in some cases promoted, during the process were those who were very pro-Frontier and did not want anyone speaking negatively about them. So, yeah, they weren't specifically targeting people who were making waves, but they also specifically retained the people who didn't. Anyway, one source told us that they have observed nothing but total and continuing failures of leadership since joining the company. So now we're getting into why all these layoffs had to happen. These were all extremely avoidable issues, but anyway. So we're going back to Formula One Manager 2022. This entire series has basically been a disaster for the company, with sales being very underwhelming compared to management's expectations. So this, again, not exactly surprising. The management games in general are fairly niche products, and then when you have a very specific Formula One manager and you're trying to turn it into an annual thing, you're gonna get diminishing returns. Like, only a very small amount of people are interested in management games in the first place. And then you're gonna dilute that even further by making it a specifically Formula One thing, which again is getting more popular, but it's not super popular as a port. Like, the football manager games do very well because football is such a big fucking deal. Formula One is not football. It is not at that level. It is not going to get the same kind of interest. But of course, management expects it to, sell so much money. Oh, we're going to make so much money off this. It's Formula One. Who doesn't want to play Formula One game? Without realizing it's a Formula One management game. Very small number of people who want to play that. Anyway, I don't know how they had miscalculated predicted sales figures, but it was less than a third of what they thought they would earn. So yeah, they had massively overinflated what they were expecting to get back on this game series. And we have heard that in a lot of game studios. It's almost like they have no idea about the product. They have no idea about the consumer base. They have no idea about their demographics. Any of that stuff. And yet, they're not the ones who got laid off. This year's version is just a clone of last year's per Force repository with a few extras added, sold at full price. It is an insult to the very small player base. This is basically saying that Formula One Manager 2023 is identical to Formula One Manager 2022. It is literally the FIFA model of just add a number. Add a number, change some of the names. Done. New game. $79.99, please. Anyway, other sources reiterated how Formula One Manager was a massive flop for the company, and so on and so on. A lot of this has to do with the licensing. Licensing will rear its head a little bit later on again, but they have like the license to the Formula One, which is very expensive. And they're very much not making their money back on that. Is kind of the issue here. It's almost as if you could have just made a professional racing manager game and just never mentioned Formula One. You would probably have made more money because you wouldn't have had to pay for the license. Anyway, actually, the biggest budget issue across multiple titles has just been uncontrollable spending, very poor decision making, and then trying to offset all of that with unrealistic sales expectations. So they're spending wildly on the licenses, thinking the licenses will pay for themselves. That's where the expectation is coming from. It's like, oh, this is a well-known property. Surely I can just slap that on the box and people will buy it, without realizing what type of game you are trying to get them to pay. Like a Formula One racing game, yes, that would make money, and does make money. Easy, no problem. But like a behind-the-scenes management game, no. Hell, like a Formula One pit stop game would probably make money, if you bill it as something like Power Wash Simulator, where it's a job type game. You're just fixing the car, Formula One mechanic kind of thing. Like, I could see that working, but like a management thing of just basically just spreadsheets. Like, I get people are interested in it and like doing it. I just don't see it. It's just not for me. I don't get it. Anyway, the debut title, Formula One Manager 2022, sold over 800,000 units in its first 9 months. Now, that is actually very good for a management game. Like, exceptionally good. It's terrible for a regular video game, but it's it's not terrible, I suppose. It's okay. But for like a management game, that's ridiculous. Nobody plays these games. Anyway, However, support for the debut title of the series was dropped early to move on to Formula One Manager 2023. So basically, they fired the game out and then ignored it and went straight on to the next game. And remember, the next game has very little difference to the original. 2023 has very little difference to 2022, and 2024 will have very little difference to 2023, and so on, because that is how annualized sports games work. Anyway, the reality is it was all down to the dev cycle. The executive team wanted Formula One Manager 2023 to release with a big Grand Prix thing, Silverstone, which again, obviously, maybe not obviously, as it transpires, but games take a very long time to make. And trying to time them with something that's upcoming, like a tie-in game for a film or a tie-in game for a big event or whatever, you need to plan that years in advance. It's not something you can just shit out in a couple of months. Or I guess you can if you're Frontier. Anyway, Frontier signed an expensive multi-year deal with Formula One, so we have to make the games, otherwise they won't, make the return on their investment. And they're not going to make the return on their investment. So they have 2022 to 2025 inclusive for Formula One, so you're going to be seeing Formula One Manager 2022 all the way up to 25, basically. Management allegedly blamed the workers for missing the sales target. Anyone could have told you that Formula One Manager 2023 wasn't going to sell as well as Formula One Manager 2022, because people had bought it. And we're well aware that the 2023 game was going to be in no way materially different. Obviously, it's not going to sell that well. The people who wanted it have bought it already, and they bought the last one. They're not going to buy this new one. But no, management decided to blame sales instead of themselves for what happened. Anyway, they came back with some, bullshit corporate thing about the layoffs and what have you, and it's like, we value the contributions of our colleagues immensely. Yes, we value it so much that we threw them right under the bus when things didn't go well, and now we're laying them off for all of our mistakes. But yeah, we value their contributions immensely. We value the contributions to our wallets, and that's about it. Anyway, internal communication said there was no placing blame. This is from Falcini. However, went on to only criticize the marketing team, which the senior team had forced to make a number of decisions against their better judgment. So they blamed marketing, and marketing were not in any way involved in the decision making. They just carried out orders from higher up and still got the blame, even though they then claimed later on that there was no blame. That's fun. That's a fun place to work. Okay, again, expensive licenses rearing their head again. Warhammer. So Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Realms of Ruin is a tactics. It's like a tactical RPG with the Warhammer license. Is another game based on a very expensive license with a very niche audience. Like real-time, small tactics things. They are starting to kind of get more popular, but they're never going to reach kind of very lofty heights that would make up for having to spend money on the Warhammer license. Anyway, announcing that anyone could be at risk of getting laid off 4 weeks before the game's launch didn't exactly help morale at the company either. Cool. We're going to lay you off even though you're about to launch something that will make us a lot of money, and now we're going to fire you for it. And they haven't launched it yet. Would you still do your job properly if you heard that? Or would you just fuck about for the next 4 weeks? It's a question. What do you think they did? Anyway, Realms of Ruin launched January 2024, and the revenue, of course, was lower than expected because they have ridiculous expectations. Their expectations are it will pay for the license, and the license is very expensive. Like, that's not really an expectation. It's a hope. They're hoping that it will pay for the license. That's not how expectations work. Anyway, then, now at this point, they're not making money. At this point, they're running a loss, right? They've already paid for the Formula One license. They pay for the Warhammer license. The games they've made with those licenses have not returned the kind of money they were expecting, because their expectations were already ridiculous. Hey, let's go acquire a new company with all the money we don't have. Let's do that. How are we going to do that? We're gonna massively over leverage the company. Anyway, Frontier's decision to acquire Complex Games, which it had worked through the various Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. Oh wait, it's the turn-based thing. Okay, so they're not actually responsible even for the Tide games. That's somebody else. Because I was thinking like those games actually kind of sell well-ish. maybe that would be alright, but they don't have them. No, they only have the tactics ones, which no, don't sell that great. Is Rogue Trader them? Because Rogue Trader is actually doing well. Or at least I've heard it's... Sorry. I've heard it's doing critically well. I actually don't know commercially if it's doing okay or not. Anyway, Frontier decides to acquire Complex Games instead of just outsourcing the game to them. They've decided to take them all in-house, which is obviously going to cost a lot of money. The business has been a leech on the availability and capacity of Frontier's business operations teams while serving no discernible benefit to revenue. This is according to one source. So basically, it was very expensive to bring them in-house, and now they're spending all of their time just working with this team instead of all of the other projects they have ongoing. Cool. For Frontier's part, they are claiming that the integration activities and growth plans for Complex are on track, whatever the fuck that means. That was English, and I don't even understand what they were saying. The acquisition delivered modest, accretive financial benefits. As expected. Is it as expected? Because your expectations are weird, guys, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Then they decided, hey, let's create our own publishing company for no reason. So Frontier Foundry, the company's publishing label for third-party games, was another financial misadventure they created in 2019, just at the beginning of COVID, or just before COVID, and has been shuttered since. They're not using it anymore. But yeah, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money to waste. A disappointing financial performance and increased competition amongst third-party publishers. Oh, who could possibly have seen that coming? Anyway, obviously that's a lot of money to spend setting up an entire new company, an entire new publishing branch, and so on, only to just shutter it a couple of days. It wasn't quite a couple of days later, a couple of years later. Then we're talking about their unproductive investments and lack of, in other key areas and so on. At one point, Frontier bought licenses for new servers months before just buying the servers themselves, throwing away hundreds of pounds in the process. So they bought money to license, rent out the servers, and then just bought the servers anyway. They paid twice, essentially. It's like a transfer of wealth from the company to that server team, the server company. But yeah, good move, guys. The company isn't spending money as if the budget was endless and management were operating under the same illusion, continuing to act as if all was well, because of course, expectations, our expectations are hopes, really, that the money we spend will come back in revenue. Spoilers, that's not happening. Anyway, they've truly lost, this is again from Falsini, this is upper management, they've truly lost all sense of what the players want and would rather prioritize profit. Where have we heard that? All of them. Basically, practically any big video game developer, we've heard this exact. You could attribute it to any of them, really. The problem is at the very top of the company, not with the majority of the people working there. Again, I could sub in any name for Frontier here, and it would ring true. This is reporting from Kirk McKeand from. This is additional reporting from Kirk. Marco Woods wrote the article themselves. Video games at Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated isn't particularly great. A lot of it is AI slop, but their video games column is actually done by a separate company, which is why they're not getting the AI shit and that kind of thing. I'm kind of hoping they will branch out and do their own thing at some point, but for now they're under the Sports Illustrated brand. But hopefully they'll move on from that, or be able to move on, I suppose, is the case. They may not be in a financial position to be able to do it. Anyway, enough about that. Take-Two laying off 5% of its staff. In addition to approximately 600 jobs or so, the publisher's latest cost reduction program also sees the cancelling of a bunch of products as well. So, I mean, the cancelling of projects is probably also what's leading to the job cuts as well, because the project's not happening, so there's no jobs for people. However, at the beginning of the year, Rockstar said they had no plans to lay anybody off. That's not that long ago, but now they're laying people off. It's not like they can't change their minds or things can't change or whatever, but that's not very long ago. And if they had no plans then, either they were lying or they only planned this recently. Which means they have not really been paying attention, management-wise. Because this is the kind of stuff you would have seen coming. And to only be planning it now and trying to implement it quickly It would suggest you don't really care about your employees all that much. But I mean, are we actually surprised about that? Anyway. All right, so they're going to be laying off about 5% of its employee base by the end of this year. So they are giving a fair amount of time, but a lot of that is because Rockstar Take-Two have a lot of their studios in Europe, UK specifically. So it's not like the US where you can just turn around and fire somebody straight away. Or lay off somebody straight away. Lay off, sorry, of course. Let's use the correct term. So this will be approximately 580 people. Take-Two expects the cost reduction program to cost up to $200 million, with as much as $140 million of that not going to salary. That goes to the product, or the projects rather. So they're going to lose $140 million from cancelling the games, or save $140 million from cancelling the games, and then $35 million of that is employee severance, and then kind of similar things, which are probably like benefit in kind and that kind of thing. And then office space reduction, $25 million, because they don't need the office space because the project's not going ahead. So, rather alarmingly, this is the third cost reduction thing Take-Two has done since February of last year. It's 3 times they've done it now, within 1 year. Well, almost within 1 year. It's like, why didn't you just do it all at once? Or, I don't know. It's maybe like the first time they did it, it just didn't do enough. The second time they did it, it didn't do enough. I don't know. I don't know what bullshit reason they come up with to just randomly fire 5% of the entire company. I don't know. Anyway, the original cost reduction plan sought to eliminate $50 million in annual spending. At the time, he said we don't expect any broad-based reduction in force, which means no layoffs. The second cost reduction program was announced a little over 2 months ago. It's only 2 months ago. It's the beginning of this year. When asked about layoffs, Elnick would only say it was more robust than the first one. Which again, the first one had no broad-based reduction in force. And more robust, no broad-based reduction. What does that mean? Absolutely no reduction in force? Or no mega reduction in force? I don't know. Okay, Take-Two has posted net losses for 7 straight quarters. Its last quarter reporting a net profit was the 3 months ending in June 30th, 2022. This was before it bought Zynga. So, that's a lot of where they're losing their money. Zynga, mobile games, all that kind of stuff. The mobile game industry, while it does make a lot of money, it has been making effectively the same money for the last while. It's not ever really making more or less. It's kind of hit a plateau somewhat. And getting new product in, getting new games out to people, shall we say, is becoming increasingly more difficult. Because they kind of have their game now, much like the live services thing, much like Fortnite, Genshin Impact, Destiny, the bigger games. People have their game now. That's the game I'm playing. I don't have time for a new game. Is new game even going to be around in the next couple of months? Because what we've seen is it isn't. It disappears. For the mobile end of things, for people who are still playing those games, will have invested pretty heavily in whatever it is. Clash of Clans, or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to that. They're not going to want to drop that investment. Even though it means nothing and is worth nothing. Still, in the lizard brain, you spent a lot of money on this thing, so you're not just going to drop it to move on to new game. And that's what they want you to do, but you're not going to, because I put a lot of time and money and effort into this game, and this game's still going, so I'm going to stay on this one. This is why, Fortnite, Roblox, Destiny, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. This is where it's coming from. You're putting so much time into it. It's requiring a lot of your time because of the Battle Pass, where you only have, you practically have to play every single hour of that month to actually get everything in that Battle Pass. This kind of grinding shit. Where are you getting the time to do the same grind on a different game? On a game that hasn't proven itself yet either. Hey Melwan, how you getting on? Sorry, I'm ranting about live services again. Shock. You could jump in any stream and I am ranting about live services. Got caught with your mom on the phone? Yeah. All the gossip to catch up on. Did you guess who died? Did you manage to guess correctly who died this week? Anyway, what's also being glossed over here is Take-Two recently acquired Gearbox Publishing. Again, another acquisition. They're doing cost reductions, but they somehow had money just hanging around where they could buy Gearbox. That seems like a pretty easy cost reduction there, would be to just not buy them. Anyway. Yeah, listen to your mom rant, and now you have to listen to me rant. Anyway. Speaking of money, I guess, ex-Blizzard exec dragged for suggesting gamers start tipping. Okay, so this was a really just stupid fucking thing that happened during the week. So Mike Ibarra is former president of Blizzard. Is he president or was he like... No, he's president, okay. Suggested that, oh, hey, it's always when when I play a game and I finish it and I think, oh, that game was really good. Oh, I wish I could tip the developer because of how good the game was, and so on. Kind of an off the cuff and kind of tone deaf tweet that he put out, but yeah, the internet had things to say about it, and they're going to be the things you already know. These games already cost $80. And you want us to pay more, this is coming from the guy from Blizzard who obviously would have sat over Overwatch and microtransactions and all of that shit, and you're still suggesting more money for this company. Anyway, what he was saying is his latest idea was to add a tip button to the game, any games that kind of left you in awe at the end and didn't try to nickel and dime you with microtransactions. Again, this is coming from Blizzard, aka Activision, the king of nickel and diming shit. Remember, it's Activision Blizzard King. King Group are Candy Crush. They're the king of this shit. Why buy it, so why we need to tip? We buy it, so why do we need to tip? Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the thing. I am not actually entirely opposed to the tipping idea. It's mostly that it's coming from this guy. And it's the particular games he's mentioning. And that kind of stuff, because there are way bigger problems in the video game industry. We do not need to start adding tipping culture into that. Tipping an indie dev, or like somebody on itch.io, or somebody who's like a solo dev kind of thing, and where you'll know that the money will go to them. And also the game didn't cost $80 in the first place, that's already a lot of money. Anyway, I know $70 is already a lot, it's more than that in some places. Anyway, it's an option at the end of the game I wish I had at times. Some games are that special. It's kind of notable that he doesn't mention, like, none of these games are Blizzard games. None of them. Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring. None of those are Blizzard games. Anyway, a lot of people had some things to say. Destin Laguirre, video director over at IGN. I think the billion and trillion dollar companies can handle compensating their employees fairly instead of relying on a tip from me. Now, this is obviously going to be coming from US culture around tipping, where the tip is effectively you're paying the waiter because the restaurant isn't paying them properly. Because for some reason that was allowed to become a thing. I don't know how that happened. And people were just cool with it, but yeah, it's subsidized pay, effectively, because they don't get paid properly. In Europe, tipping culture isn't like that. People are paid, they're not paid well, exactly, but they're paid at least minimum wage for their time when they're waiting staff or whoever it is, and the tip is just on top, It's just why tipping isn't as big a thing in Europe or outside of the US in the first place. So a lot of people would be responding with the idea is that tipping is us paying the employee instead of the multi-billion-dollar company should be paying their employees better. Anyway, a lot of people were pointing out that former head of Blizzard employees were just recently decimated by layoffs and were denied their bonuses and so on. It's pretty rich for them to be suggesting that, oh yeah, you should be tipping developers now instead. How about loosen your own purse strings? How about that first? Anyway, the kind of gist of it is that a lot of people don't trust that even if the tipping thing was a thing and we got past all the many reasons why people don't want to do it, how can you be certain that the money you tip would actually go to the developer and not straight into Bobby Kotick's pile of gold? You wouldn't, is the problem. Anyway, the way around that is to actually find out the people who actually worked on the games, which is why I play the credits on my Let's Plays. I don't skip them. look for the people, look for a creative director you like, look for monster designers, look for character artists, look for environmental artists, that kind of stuff. Know their names. Follow them. Don't follow the company. Don't follow the brand. They change too much. People get laid off a lot. People move around in the industry because they're forced to. Just because they made a game you really liked 15 years ago, it's a good chance none of those people are still at the company. Unless it's a Japanese company, because they tend to stay there forever. But anywhere else, chances are they're not there anymore. Anyway, this quote at the end by Ethan Gach I thought just was kind of important. But basically, until there are better rules in place for profit sharing and making sure voting with your wallet type logic actually goes to the creators it's meant to support, it's hard not to see paying extra as just another handout to the shareholders. I hate now when I tip in a restaurant by cards mostly, and I don't know if the servers there are really getting it. Yeah, exactly. I would much rather just do, the old way where like your uncle or your granddad, was almost certainly always men for me, but they'd always just palm you like a tenner. A tenner back then would have been a lot of money, I'll be honest. But anyway, they just have the cash in their hand and they shake your hand and you're like, oh, I have a tenner. Randomly. And it'd be like, don't tell your dad. And your dad obviously knows he's doing it, but still, don't tell your dad. Don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad. I'd rather do that. I'd rather put the cash down and be like, literally here, you take it. Specifically the person who was waiting on. Not into a tip pool thing where everyone pools their tips. That makes more sense for the US. Again, because they're not being paid properly. It makes more sense to be a pooled situation. It would make way more sense for them to be paid correctly. Outside of that, I don't think they should be pooled, to be honest. But anyway, I think I'm probably a minority in that sense of things. Anyway, right. Continuing the great games preservation news, Little Big Planet 3 servers will remain offline indefinitely. Cool. Sony has confirmed Little Big Planet 3 servers will remain offline indefinitely. The servers were taken down in January due to some kind of technical fault, and it was seen at the time that this would be temporary and they'd be back up eventually. And no, they're not coming back up. Now, however, ongoing technical issues mean the servers will not be coming back online. All online services, including access to other players' creations, are no longer available. So this was just tweeted out by the Little Big Planet Twitter account. There was no press release. There was no reason given what the technical issues were specifically. My guess is it's been compromised and they don't know how to close the loophole without breaking the server, would be my guess. A similar issue did happen to Dark Souls on PC years ago, where people could get in and take over your PC and just, maliciously just start fucking with your machine. And they were getting in through the Dark Souls multiplayer thing somehow. And they took that network down. And again, that was down for a really long time. Again, because I don't think they knew how to fix it without breaking the game. Now, they did fix it eventually. I would still suggest you don't play PC Dark Souls anyway, online. Console, you're probably alright, but not online. Anyway. So, user-generated content stored locally on your PS4, PS5 will remain available. Any new user-generated content you create can be played on your machine, but offline features such as the campaign will also remain playable. So basically all the offline stuff is fine. But any of the online features, if you're not familiar with Little Big Planet, because it's probably been a while now, but Little Big Planet is a single-player-wise, it's a platforming game. It's very colorful, it's very fun, cute, wholesome kind of thing. However, that's only half the game. The other half of the game was a user generation suite where you could make any kind of game you wanted. In Little Big Planet 1, it was generally the same kind of game that Little Big Planet already was, a platformer type thing. You could just make your own levels. And people made really good stuff. Little Big Planet 2, they opened it up much further. The creation suite allowed for a lot of different things. I remember somebody remade an early part of Final Fantasy VII in Little Big Planet 2, and it was really good. Really impressive. Little Big Planet 3, they just went nuts. Do the same kind of thing, it just got even bigger. And that eventually transformed into Dreams from Media Molecule, same company. And Dreams has some really, really impressive stuff. And not a lot of it is games. Some of it is like film or like visual novels and stuff like that, or just fun experiences kind of thing. But the point is, now you can't have access to any of it because it's all gone. So from the community, countless hours spent by the whole community to make tens of millions of levels that are now completely gone to be forgotten about, and all we get is one sentence long tweet. That's coming from some people in the community who are pretty angry about it. Other people kind of asking questions about it because basically the platinum is no longer obtainable. This is a Sony exclusive thing, so the trophies would have been kind of a marketing thing for the game. So technically the platinum is no longer achievable because the servers are gone. This would not be the first game to have this issue, but it is a Sony first party thing, so you would think they'd be a little bit better about that kind of thing, but I don't know. So if you can't fix the ongoing technical issues, is there any interest in disclosing what those issues are? I mean, if you're not able to fix them, just fucking tell us what the issue is. You know, they're never going to do that because it's going to compromise their network security, but they really should disclose that information. Anyway, you might think, okay, so Little Big Planet 3's ones are gone, but hey, you said earlier Little Big Planet 2's creative suite was pretty good. Why don't they just use that? Yeah, servers for that are gone too. And yeah, so are the ones for Little Big Planet 1. In fact, all of the Little Big Planet servers are all gone. Sony said online services for Little Big Planet, Little Big Planet 2, Little Big Planet 3, Little Big Planet PS Vita had all been taken offline for good after a long period of downtime. So the issue is that in Little Big Planet 3, you could also play all the levels from 1 and 2. So they're all using the same server setup, basically. So once you've lost the one for 3, you've lost all of them. They're all gone. That's a massive blow to just community creation, game preservation in general. There's some incredible creative works that people don't have access to anymore. And it's not that they can't be played anymore, but it's also that you can't export them anymore either. Little Big Planet 3, I think, started the exporting option where you could actually export a playable version of your game, of your creation, whatever it was. You can't do that anymore either because that would have required online functionality, so you don't have that. So without knowing exactly what the issue is, we can't say if this is just Sony taking the opportunity to reduce costs or if there actually is a serious technical problem that they just can't overcome without seriously breaking the game. We don't know, and video game companies are so secretive, we'll never know. Or we'll possibly never know. Or by the time we do know, we're on to PS8 at that point or something like that. Anyway, moving on. So, the games industry is doing pretty great, right? How do you think the developers feel about that? Well, anyway, 70% of developers unsure of live service games' sustainability. Yeah, same. It's higher than 70% to be honest, but anyway, I'm actually kind of surprised it's so low. With so many games fighting for players' attention and interest losing out over time, time sync games are at a risk of losing steam eventually. Time sync games, that is definitely a way to put them. Fortnite and Destiny and all of those type of things. Time sync games, because that is definitely how they should be perceived. Anyways, this is coming out of a recent survey done by... it's done over at GDC, but not by GDC. The Game Developers Collective at the Game Developers Conference. Anyway... 600 developers were interviewed, which is, you kind of need a bit more than that to get a real breakdown of the industry, but it's a decent enough number. They suggest statisticians and so on suggest 1,000. It's kind of the number you really need for this data to be like properly meaningful. 600 is, it's just a bit more than half, so, you're gonna have to take a little bit grain of salt with these. Anyway, 600 developers were interviewed between February and March 2024, which again, during GDC. So for the purposes of this survey, a live service game is defined by their frequent updates and in-app purchases. So any game that gets very frequent updates and somewhat relies on its in-app purchases. So Warzone, for this case, counts as a live service. Fortnite obviously counts as a live service because it's updated constantly. Helldivers 2 counts as a live service, and so on. There was a previous survey done where it said like 95% of developers are working on live service games or something like that. And that was a little bit misleading because its definition for live services were just games that get updated online. I mean, that's practically every game, you know. So it would make sense that every game is being worked on. Right? You know, that's where the 95% came from. So this is a little bit of a, you know, it's a more narrow definition. They don't go into exactly what counts as frequent. Is once a month frequent? Is once a week frequent? Is once a year frequent? You know, anyway. You just have to go with it, whatever you think in your head what frequent means. Anyway. So we have it here. So 31% very concerned, 39% somewhat concerned, which is where the 70% is coming from overall. And then 25% are not concerned, which I guess means they're in management, probably. And then 4% don't know, which is... How do you not know? Anyway. So loss of interest from players and increased competition are the major drivers of sustainability concerns. So developers are concerned that people, you know, lose interest in the game because they already have a live service ongoing. And this one isn't so interesting that they're willing to drop Fortnite, we'll say, or anything like that. Competition from other live services games, Fortnite is very established at this point. You know, it's got years of content backing it up and so on. To jump into a brand new one, when all of your friends are on the free-to-play one, that's been going for 6 or 7 years at this point, it's a tough sell. It is, and they have no one to blame but themselves on this. Well, okay, they have Epic to blame, I guess. They can blame Epic about it. Anyway, players losing interest in live service games, 63%. Competition from other live service games, 62%. So players losing interest in live service games is just a general fatigue that the video game community is feeling over live services in general. So there is this kind of bubbling sense that too many developers are making live service games and not focusing on legacy, we'll say, type games. You know, your standard single player game, multiplayer without the ridiculous live service elements to it, you know. Just take a game from 10 years ago, that, basically. They're not focusing on those kind of things. They're going all in on their live services things, and those games are failing. You know, they're shuttering after 6 months. Some of them are shuttering even earlier than that. That's taking a huge hit to those developers. It takes some of the developers out of the industry completely. We're basically losing a lot of diversity in video games, and it's becoming noticeable now. Like I would have said this years ago, but now even just a casual video game player is noticing that a lot of live service shit going around. Anyway, competition from other live service games. Yeah, I mean, every game is trying to be a live service game, so obviously. Rising user acquisition costs. This isn't just like how much money necessarily it costs to acquire a new user. This is also how can we entice a new user away from a live service they're already playing? You know, how can we entice them to stop playing Fortnite and move over to shoot the gun with your friends 5 or whatever they decide to call it? Rising development costs. Live services, I think a lot of upper management don't realize how expensive they are to make. Because they think, oh, we just make like a sandboxy type game, and players basically make the fun for themselves. You know, we don't have to do any scripting or voice acting or cinematics or any of that kind of stuff, right? We just throw them at each other. And yeah, we'll throw out a skin every now and again. That'll keep them happy. Making skins costs a lot of money. Keeping up with that cadence of updates that they have, again, forced on themselves. Like every week, there needs to be something new. Every month for the battle pass, there needs to be this massive collection of assets now. That costs a lot of money. More money than you think. And then you're going to need to keep that development team. You're going to need to keep a sizable chunk of the development team around just to maintain the game and to put out new, whatever it is, new modes or new expansions or what have you. Anyway, rising development costs. Again, games are trying to be bigger instead of better. They're all going all in on quantity and not quality these days. How many 100-hour games are you seeing that are just full of grind and shite? Like, they're not exactly content dense. Competition from other entertainment, that's always there, and 20% is pretty low. Loss of interest from investors, again, that's always going to be a concern, and 12%, not a big deal. Other, could be whatever, and then don't know is only 1%. Anyway, 44% of respondents have a mixed view on live service games, while 45% hold them in a negative light. So nobody really holds them in a positive light. 44 plus 45. It's pretty high. There's not a lot of room for I hold live service games in a positive view. Not many. Very few. Not great. Talking about monetization models and what they think. So this is the combined view of monetization models used in most recent game versus their next game. This is the idea of what was the monetization model of your last game, and what do you think will be the monetization model of your next game, or if you're already working on it, do you already just know what the next thing will be? For the most part, there's no real change. You know, the guys who are already doing upfront payments, that's the you buy the game, you get the game, and that's the end of it. It's still a sizable chunk of it, 72%, and they believe 76% upcoming. In-game content, that's skins and what have you, 27 to 24%. Physical retail releases still stayed much the same. Subscription services, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, that kind of thing, battle passes, what have you. The interesting one is paid DLC. Paid DLC has seen a pretty significant increase, 9%, which is pretty big. So the expectation was these developers would have reasonably consistent monetization models. Yeah, so the idea is that paid DLC shows a 9% increase for upcoming games, even when controlling for population. So they're looking to move into less frequent updates, but more significant updates in their paid DLC, expansions and what have you. That's the MMO model. Works pretty well. You know, you give them a massive chunk of stuff, and then you leave them to it. You put out some small updates just to, you know, fix bugs and maybe do some quality of life stuff, but you don't really add any massive content for a good while. And then you release another expansion, and so on, and you do it that way. It's a lot more sustainable because the team has time to actually plan something instead of having to, oh, I need something for next week, I'll just cobble some any old shit together and just get it ready. Like, anyway. Cool. We'll leave it there for the news. We'll leave Harold to play in the background. Right, anyway, that is your news for 15th to 21st of April 2024. So we saw a bit of the Nintendo Indie World Showcase. Some new independent games making their way to Switch. A lot of them will also be making their way to PC and PlayStation, Xbox, and so on. It being a Nintendo-focused showcase, obviously they're only going to mention the Switch, but do keep in mind that a lot of those will be going to other platforms as well. Some interesting games shown off there. Some new games announced. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Still have to actually finish the first Kingdom Come Deliverance. What kind of put me off it was just, it was very buggy when it launched, and I just really was against their anti-save scum stance. It's like, just let me save scum. Just let me do it. Anyway, I might go back to it at some point. I don't know. That other game, his name I've already forgotten, but it's by the ex-Blizzard people. Had a very impressive trailer, but had no video, had no gameplay elements to it, so we don't really know what kind of game it's going to be. Trailer was impressive though. I'm hoping they didn't spend their entire budget on it because it was very impressive. Some other games there's some release dates. Thousand X Resist has its release date confirmed. The Duck Detective, The Secret Salami has its release date confirmed. Mullet Mad Jack. All of them are coming either May or July at some point. I don't remember the exact dates. You'll have to check back yourself on that one. I keep them all on my calendar. Game Pass, the refresh for this month is pretty decent, although I don't actually remember what they are now. I remember it was good, I just don't quite remember what exactly it was. There were two games that are launching straight into Game Pass Day 1 releases. I have to look because I can't remember. Oh, where are they? Oh yeah, Another Crab's Treasure and A Euden Chronicle and Have a Nice Death has already been out. Yeah. Another Crab's Treasure will be kind of fun time thing. I think Dark Souls heads will get a pretty good kick out of it, and people who aren't really, are maybe just trying to think about sticking their toe into the Dark Souls, but are worried about how difficult it is. Another Crab's Treasure has a lot of like helpful accessibility stuff for people who are, maybe don't feel as competent at a kind of Dark Souls thing. It was that good that it blew your mind. Exactly, that's exactly what it was. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is a Suikoden spiritual successor. I'm kind of curious how the Kickstarter community took that being added to Game Pass. That is a Kickstarted game. So I'm curious how they're handling that, because as far as I can tell, it's the first Kickstarter game that's launched day one into a subscription. I think. Could be wrong about that. I haven't heard any grumblings or rumblings about that, so I'm curious how they're handling it. How would you be pissed about it, right? If you had Kickstarted the game, and in general the Kickstarter, it's a little cheap. If you want to get the game, it's usually just a little bit cheaper than having to buy the game outright. So let's say it's a $70 game. The Kickstarter price, the amount of money they'd want from it would be about $50 or something. And that would get you like a digital version of the game whenever it's launched, and you're contributing to making the game. It's whatever. And then, Kickstarter has additional packages for getting you into the credits and all that kind of stuff. Only to then find out later on down the line that if you already had a Game Pass subscription, you would never have had to pay for the game in the first place. On the other hand, if you had never put the money into the Kickstarter, the game may have never happened. So, there's an interesting discussion to be had there, I think, on how people would have taken it and how people would have handled it. Anyway, we don't know because I haven't heard anything about it, but maybe, who knows. Harold Halibut is the only new release this week that actually looked kind of interesting. There's more next week. Pretty decent games coming out then. But anyway, speaking of next week, I'm not going to go over the industry bullshit because it's depressing and I don't want to go over it again. Next week, so over on the channel, I keep pressing F12. I keep forgetting to do that. It's F11 I want. Alright, so again, here's our game card, big wall of games, roadmap thing for what Let's Plays I want to do this year. We're not making a good dent, really. Now, in my defense, a lot of these games aren't actually out yet. But not in my defense, a lot of these games are out. I haven't played them, so yeah, I don't know. Some of these might have to be swapped out, or I might need to take a row away or something. Anyway, that is the plan. A couple of games that are in progress are technically not in progress. We'll get into that in a second. Anyway, next week, I don't have a D&D game played, so on Wednesday we will do a Foley Plays Games a Bit, which is where we play newly released games, asterisk, and we play them for 2 or 3 hours and just see what they're like. So this is a Highland Song. This is from the developer Inkle, who make Heaven's Vault, who made Overboard, who made Around the World in 80 Days, a couple of other games. They make some really good narrative games. Heaven's Vault in particular is very, very good. A Highland Song, as you can see, is kind of a runner game, kind of a runner platformer type thing. And the way the narrative plays out is what route you take through the Highlands. If you decide to go up high, decide to go low, decide to go mid, whatever, changes the story a little bit. So we're going to check that out on Wednesday. And our schedule then, Tuesday and Thursday, Resident Evil 0. Friday and Saturday, Final Fantasy 4. Both of those are continuing their respective series playthroughs, so I'm doing a Resident Evil series playthrough. Resident Evil 0 is next up, and I'm doing a Final Fantasy series playthrough, and Final Fantasy 4 is next up. And then a Highland Song we will slot in on the Wednesday, for my Fully Plays Games a Bit series. I haven't streamed a game in a while. It's probably like 2 weeks or so now that I haven't done it. I don't really have a great answer for that, to be honest. It's just, yeah, I am tired, and I think a lot of it is kind of stressful stuff, personal life, what have you. It's my intention anyway to get back to it next week. Can't say for definite all these streams will go ahead, but I am endeavoring to do so. The whole idea of me doing fewer games was that, it wouldn't feel like such an overwhelming thing to stream. Like it's a stream. I'm just playing video games. It shouldn't be an overwhelming thing, but sometimes it does. But that was the whole idea of reducing the number of games. I used to play a lot of games. You know, every day was a different game. And a lot of just reducing that, doubling up on the days and so on, was to just make that easier. But it's not really going that way, so I don't know. Anyway, we'll get away from that, my rant about my personal life. That's the plan. Resi Zero Tuesday, Thursday, Final Fantasy 4 Friday, Saturday, and a Highland Song on Wednesday. Probably PC for a Highland Song, maybe Switch. I'm deciding it's not on PlayStation or Xbox, so decide which one to go for. Probably PC. Anyway, that's it for me for today. A little bit later on in the day, I overslept. It's just simplest answer. I did say I was tired, you know, I overslept. Anyway, I will be back on Tuesday for Resident Evil 0. So hopefully I'll see you then. Thanks, Melwan. Thanks for the heart as well. Appreciate it. Does that work? Cool. Was I saying? Yes, Tuesday I'll be back. Resident Evil 0. Thanks, Melwan, for keeping me company in the chat. Hope everything's okay with your mom as well. All the gossip and the rant was about something silly and not something important. Also, anyone who's lurking, appreciate it as well. You don't always have to comment or anything. It's just nice to have people nearby. Right, if you want to catch up on any previous Let's Plays or whatever you, all my VODs are all over on YouTube, youtube.com/Doom5. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch live, twitch.tv/Doom5. Right, I'm off. Have a good one, and I'll see you on Tuesday. See you, Melwin.